Did Aristotle say that women were defective? The quick answer to the question, did Aristotle say that women were defective, is
Yes, he did.
Greek philosopher Aristotle, around 350 BC, influenced the thought and the worldview across the Mediterranean world, the Greek and Roman worlds. He taught that males were superior and females were inferior based on science. He wrote On the Generation of Animals, which is about animal reproduction, specifically humans. Aristotle thought and taught, based on observation, that the physical head of humans contained many fluid-like substances from the eyes and ears and nose and mouth, and he therefore reasoned that the physical head of men also generated semen. That semen was actually tiny, fully formed humans. He thought that semen came from the head, traveled down the spine, out of the man's body, and into the woman's body. Of course, that meant that the woman gave nothing except a place to grow. The man generated the seed of life. The women were simply the dirt. For Aristotle, because men could produce semen, they were considered complete and superior. Women, because they could not, became therefore inferior. They were deformed and deficient and defective males. In his book, The Generation of Animals, Aristotle stated, "The female is, as it were, a deformed male. A boy resembles a woman in physique, and a woman is an infertile male, lacking the power to concoct semen because of the coldness of its nature." In Aristotle's view, a man's head was the source of life.
Well, okay then. That was a fascinating science lesson. But of course, Aristotle got his science wrong. You may be sitting there saying, what does this have to do with the Bible and men and women partnering together?
Everything.
Aristotle influenced Greek culture, Roman culture, early church culture, and Western culture. His impact has been felt for centuries. He promoted that males were superior and females were inferior, and his audiences shared Aristotle's worldview because he was speaking to Gentile audiences filled with Roman and Greek Gentile people. Now, Paul used the word kephale, head, and his audience would have immediately thought of the place where life originates, or the source of life and nourishment. Or they might have thought where something comes from, or maybe like the beginning point. Now, remember, Paul used kephale in 1 Corinthians 11. Now, that context, if you can remember, is where things come from. Man comes from woman, and woman comes from man, but everything comes from God. 1 Corinthians 11, understanding this Greek and this Roman cultural context, is not about authority. Rather, it was about respecting each other because we are all mutually dependent on one another.
So a couple of other New Testament examples where Paul uses kephale. In Colossians chapter 2, verse 19, Paul explains about the effect of disconnection with the kephale. He says, "They have lost connection with the head, the kephale, from whom the whole body, supported and held together by its ligaments and sinews, grows, as God causes it to grow." So here Paul is not describing a loss of vision or leadership or authority, but a loss of support and a loss of growth. Or consider Ephesians 5, where Jesus is called the head of the church, the kephale of the church. Now, obviously, Jesus is King of Kings and Lord of Lords, but this passage is not describing Jesus ruling. Instead, it talks about Jesus sacrificing and serving and submitting and saving and giving and washing. And the man, of course, the husband, is instructed to love his wife as his own body, which he feeds and nourishes. All the vocabulary of support and life and nourishment. Not a lot about hierarchy there. So, of course, if Paul wanted to speak about authority, he would have chosen the common Greek word for authority, which is exousia. Now, with Aristotle's biology lesson, it shaped the culture. So when Paul used kephale, his Greek audience would likely share Aristotle's view and think of body imagery rather than boss and authority and leader.
Now, in that day when Paul was writing, in the Greek culture, men could abuse their wives. They could divorce their wives for any reason. They could also kill their wives because of the household code. Paul wanted the early church to reject these views and adopt a powerful, humble, life-giving model. Godly men were to be a source of refreshment for the women oppressed badly by society. This was countercultural teaching that Paul was giving. Now, think about your church today. How do women feel valued in your church? Sadly, many women throughout the world find church at times to be a place that actually devalues them. One woman said from South Asia, "Often I feel invisible in the body of Christ. I have something to offer Jesus and the church, but it's not really welcomed." A North American said, "I think I could not even show up at church on Sunday mornings and no one would notice or even care." Could it be that Aristotle still influences the church and many church leaders? Are women somehow in your local church and local churches around the world still considered defective or less valuable than men? We should allow Jesus and Paul to influence how we both celebrate and empower God's daughters to serve shoulder to shoulder alongside God's sons.
So with this information, take a few moments and consider 4 key questions. What does this teach you about the character and nature of God? What does it show you about people? What is one thing you can apply and obey today? And who can you share this information with? Until all know, run with it.